Hey guys, as you know, I have been trying to do a little cut for summer process just to lean out a little bit as we head into the warm summer months. To be honest, it has not gone quite to plan. It's been a little bit iffy. Things aren't going quite right, but that's okay. We're still chilling. It's not like I need to lose fat for health purposes, so I don't really care if I end up being super successful at this. I promise I will update you guys about everything that has been going on in a video coming soon, but today I really just wanted to take a second to talk about how to overcome hunger when you're in a deficit. Because when you're trying to lose fat, the biggest thing that usually stands in your way is hunger or cravings. The body is a homeostasis machine. If you are actively trying to be in a calorie deficit to lose fat, your body will send signals to you to make you want to eat more to get you out of that deficit so that your body stays basically where it is. And the biggest signal that it sends is hunger. That really is what makes weight loss so challenging, is that your body is driving you to stay in an equilibrium and you have to fight against your body to get out of that equilibrium so that you can ultimately lose fat. When you are actively trying to lose fat, some hunger is definitely to be expected because again, that is your body trying to drive you to stay in homeostasis. But how you approach and deal with this hunger can really make or break the fat loss progress. There are steps that you can take to greatly reduce the amount of hunger that you feel and thus to greatly reduce the chance that you're gonna end up giving into all of your different cravings and just binge on everything and lose all your progress. So today I want to take you through my top 7 tips for how to reduce hunger as well as deal with hunger while in a deficit. So if you're excited for these tips, give this video a big thumbs up, hit that subscribe button to see more videos from me. Without further ado, let's get in. Tip number 1. Tip number 1 is actually something that I am practicing literally right at this moment, and that is intermittent fasting. Now, I have said this countless times. Intermittent fasting is not a magical weight loss tool. If you change nothing about your diet and your lifestyle and you just start practicing intermittent fasting, you aren't just going to magically start losing fat. The exception to that would be is if you are insulin resistant and intermittent fasting actually helps you improve your insulin sensitivity, then you could actually end up losing some fat just through intermittent fasting alone. But for most people, if you just start intermittent fasting, you're not guaranteed to just start dropping pounds. Ultimately, I strongly recommend exploring fasting more as a health tool rather than a weight loss tool. However, there is something to be said for some of the benefits of intermittent fasting when it comes to trying to be in a deficit and not be super hungry. And the short of it is that once your body adapts to your fasting schedule, you don't feel hungry in the morning. So that's half the day that you don't have to worry about feeling hungry. The rest is just after your eating window at night, and we're gonna talk about that later. If you can use intermittent fasting to regulate your insulin enough to the point where when you wake up, you can go several hours without feeling hungry at all, that gives you a major advantage when you're trying to be in a calorie deficit. Right now, it is almost 3 p.m. and I could definitely eat. In fact, I'm about to go make breakfast and show you what I'm eating, but I am not ravenously hungry. If I had to, I could probably fast until dinner time. I'm not going to, because I want to eat, but I probably could. To be fair, I intermittent fast anyway, regardless of if I'm trying to gain or lose weight. It's just a part of my lifestyle. I've been doing it for about 2 years now, and I feel fantastic doing it. The mental clarity is amazing, and I love intermittent fasting. So for me, it's kind of just a bonus that it helps with calorie restriction. Again, not a magical weight loss tool. It will not make you just drop weight. Mostly a health tool, but it can help with compliance. So there's your tip number 1. Let's go to tip number 2. For that, I am taking you with me to the kitchen. Tip number 2 is to add a ton of bulky foods to your meals. Now I mean bulky in 2 different ways. The first is bulky in terms of volume, so foods that just take up a lot of space. The second kind of bulky is in terms of nutrient density. You want them to be jam-packed with as many micronutrients as possible. Foods that take up a lot of space will obviously just fill up your stomach a lot better rather than foods that don't take up a lot of space. But then it's also really important to get the nutrients into your food, because if you're cutting calories, you're also cutting down on vitamins and minerals that you're consuming. So you need to make sure that what you do consume is chock full of those vitamins and minerals. If you're eating a super nutrient-rich diet, but you're in a calorie deficit, you'll probably be fine. You'll get as many micronutrients as you need. But if you're in a calorie deficit and your diet doesn't have very many vegetables, doesn't have very many nutrient-dense things, you're actually gonna kind of starve your body of those nutrients, and so your body will be constantly driving you to eat more because it's not getting the nutrients that it needs. So right now I'm making a turkey breakfast hash. If it's good, I'll put the recipe in the description. I'm just following something that I found on the internet, and it's full of, obviously, turkey, but also a ton of different vegetables. So I'm chopping up some zucchini, I have butternut squash, I have apple, which isn't a vegetable, but it has bulk and it has nutrients, so whatever. And then also some shredded carrot, and I think that's it. Oh, and then I'm also gonna add a ton of greens to that. So it's gonna add a ton of volume and micronutrients to the meal without adding a ton of calories. And here we have a breakfast that's not only going to make me feel really full because of the massive amount of volume in this. To be fair, cooking it down did decrease the volume because now there's a little bit less water in it, but I'll just drink some water on the side or something. But it's also going to keep my body super happy because it's jam-packed with micronutrients. So even though I'm cutting calories, my body's still gonna be getting the nutrition that it needs to like function properly. Okay, first of all, that breakfast was phenomenal, so I will definitely link the recipe down in the description below if you want to make it as well. But now it is time to move on to tip number 3, and this tip sounds very obvious in the context of hunger, but really not very obvious in the context of a cut or trying to be in a calorie deficit. And it is to make sure you're eating enough. And you might be thinking, but Marissa, I'm supposed to be in a calorie deficit. Like, how does that make sense to eat more in order to lose fat and not be hungry and still be in a calorie deficit? Well, if you look at it from the perspective of how eating too little drives you to end up binging and then eating more than your maintenance calories, then it's pretty obvious why you should make sure you're eating enough while still being in a deficit. So to put this into like more numeric, understandable terms, I usually recommend a 15 to 20% deficit from your maintenance calories. So that means you're eating about 80 to 85% of your maintenance calories. This is a big enough deficit to really make an impact on your body, where a deficit of like 50 or 100 calories is probably gonna be something your body adapts to super quickly, and then you won't actually notice much weight loss. 15 to 20% is something that will actually result in real results, but it isn't so big that your body's gonna be freaking out because you're not getting enough nutrition and you're basically losing weight at such a fast speed that your body's like, yo, this is not cool. We need to eat everything in sight like right now. So if you're in a deficit and you're basically doing everything else right, but you're still so hungry that it's driving you to end up binging and eating more than your maintenance calories, then it's probably because you're not eating enough. Your deficit is way too big. You're not gonna be able to efficiently lose fat if you're in like a 50% deficit for 3 days, but then you're so hungry that you end up eating your body weight in pizza and ice cream every 4 days. That results in your weight staying mostly stagnant and or ending up putting on extra fat as a result. So I would like to have a snack. So I just finished inputting my macros for the day. So far I've put in obviously my breakfast, and then I decided to approximate what I'm gonna have for dinner just so I kind of have like context for what I'm gonna have for the rest of the day, so I can figure out like what else might fit in nicely. So I figured now is a good time to have the macro talk, aka tip number 4. Your macro distribution is going to play a huge part in how hungry or satiated you feel throughout the day. Now, different people are going to feel different on different macro ratios. So you have to figure out what works best for you. There is no one ideal weight loss, fat loss macro ratio. So just for example, I personally feel better when I'm in a deficit, when I'm eating more fats and fewer carbs. I feel a lot more satiated, I feel like I have more energy, and I also find that when I eat more carbs, I tend to crave more carbs, and it tends to make me hungrier a lot faster. So I stick to a higher-ish fat diet, not like keto, just like more fat than a calorie calculator would usually suggest. But you might find that if your carbs are lower and your fats are higher, that you don't feel satiated, that eating more fat really doesn't fill you up, and so you get hungrier a lot quicker. Maybe you also don't have as much energy in the gym because you don't have as many carbs in your body, and so you might do a lot better in a deficit eating higher carb. You really have to figure out what works for you and your body. Now, I do have a video that takes you through the entire process that you need to go through to figure out what what this ideal macro ratio is, so I will link that up there. And then there's also like a little tool to download. I'll link that down in the description here if you want to download that as well. But basically, once you go through that process to really figure out what agrees best with your body, it makes everything so much easier. So the TLDR for tip number 4 is just to find the macro ratio that works best for you and your body. There is no secret fat loss macro ratio. Now, let's move on to tip number 5. Tip number 5 is to make sure you're drinking enough water. Now, by enough water, I don't mean like a gallon plus water a day. Like a gallon, fine, maybe if you want to, but I just mean don't drink like only 8 ounces of water a day like I usually do. It's not a good idea in general, let alone for hunger. Now I do need to like start by saying I am not the biggest fan of this tip. I feel like it kind of encourages people to drink water instead of eating nutrient-dense foods. That's not good. Like, you need to eat enough. Please refer back to my previous tip about eating enough. But as I have been working on drinking more water than 8 ounces of water a day, I've been trying to drink 2 of these a day. So far I've been successful, go me. But as I've been doing that, I've realized that, you know, it's actually really helpful to drink enough water. Since I've been making an effort to drink more water, I have realized that a lot of my cravings that I was having before were driven by thirst. I was just so thirsty, my body was like, hey, go eat this thing that probably has like a lot of water content and you'll be good. So drinking more water has helped me just like focus on the nutrition that I actually need rather than focusing my nutrition around like water-dense vegetables. Although it's not bad to be eating more vegetables, but like, still. A really good golden rule to follow for how much water you should drink is about half your body weight in ounces. So just as an easy example, if you're 100 pounds, drinking 50 ounces of water should get you about what you need in a day. Obviously, this is going to vary from person to person, depends on the climate, depends on how much you're sweating when you exercise, etc. But you certainly don't need to be drinking like gallons of water a day. The importance of water has been majorly overemphasized in the health and fitness space, but it is still important. Like, you will die without water. So drink enough water so that you don't die. And if you drink enough water, you won't have your thirst cues working against you to make your hunger cues even stronger. So, drink up. Let me go. I finished bottle number 1. Now I just need to fill this up and finish it again. I'm about to go for my daily walk, which leads me nicely into my next tip, which is to find ways to work around or reduce boredom hunger. We've all been in that place where you're just like, working on homework or something, and you're like, I'm bored. And then your brain's like, well then, we should eat. Now that's not usually very useful, because usually that's not real hunger. You're just bored, and so you're looking for something to do, and for some reason, our brains always want us to eat when we're bored. Ain't nobody got time for hunger that isn't even real hunger. So finding ways to reduce that is very useful. One of my favorite ways is to stay relatively active throughout the day. So going for regular walks really does help me cut down on the amount of boredom hunger that I feel. Something that I used to do when I was in college and I was studying is I would love to just chop up tiny pieces of celery and cucumber and just snack on those, because obviously very little calories, they have some amount of nutrition, and it just gives you something to do without really impacting anything. You know, there's nothing negative nutritionally about celery and cucumber. There's a little bit of fiber, which is great. There's water. It'll keep you hydrated, and it'll just give your hand something to do when you're just bored and you're like, I want to get up and eat everything, but I have to study, and you won't end up reaching for the tray of brownies and snacking on those instead. Oh, also when I was studying, I always had a cup of tea next to me. I literally, like, my desk was here, and behind me was my tea shelf with my teapot on it, so I could just constantly be like boiling water to brew more tea so that I would always have tea, and that would also just give me something to do. I could just sip on the tea while I studied, and it completely satisfied that like boredom hunger that I was feeling because it wasn't real hunger. So I recommend finding whatever strategies work best for you, whether it's getting in regular activity, having something very, very easy to snack on next to you, I don't know, doing like mental games every now and then just to keep your mind engaged so it's not wandering off to food. Whatever works for you to get rid of that extra hunger that isn't really hunger is gonna help. It is finally dinner time, and I have made myself a ginormous plate of shredded chicken and vegetables. This may go down in history as one of the bigger dinners that I have tried to consume. Like, this is a lot of food. It's not the most calorie dense, that's for sure, but
There's a lot of veggies on this plate. I roasted butternut squash, turnip, cauliflower, beets, and carrots with some curry and cumin, and then I just have shredded chicken with avocado and a little bit of the Primal Kitchen Green Goddess dressing on the chicken. Super easy, super simple, and most importantly, I will not be hungry when I am done eating this. This is tip number 7. Have at least one meal during the day that's really, really big. And by big, I don't necessarily mean like it has to be like this. I mean big enough to make you feel full, to completely get rid of any sign of hunger. Even if you're one of those people that feels really, really good eating several smaller meals throughout the day, make sure there is one that actually satiates you. There is nothing worse than being in a deficit and constantly feeling hungry with no reprieve from that feeling. I like to do this with both breakfast and dinner. My breakfast and dinner combined are probably usually about 75 to 80% of my calories. They tell my brain that, hey, like we're getting enough food. There is plenty of food to go around. So there's no immediate need to have a drive, hunger, to continue to eat more. So you don't feel as hungry because you're full, basically. But if you just want to pick one meal, the one meal that I definitely recommend doing this for is dinner. I've gotten quite a few questions about how to overcome late night snacking cravings. This is how. Eat until you're full. Eat until you don't crave anything, until nothing else sounds good, and then you won't have cravings. Dinners like these are literally my secret weapon for fat loss because they satiate me both physically and mentally. This massive volume of food is going to keep me so full and so happy. So if you're really struggling with hunger while in a deficit, have a big meal. Have a meal that satiates you. Have a meal that tells your body, hey, there's plenty of food to go around. We're just choosing not to eat some of it for now. But speaking of this giant dinner, it is starting to get cold, so I think I'm going to go ahead and just stop talking and eat my dinner. I hope these tips are helpful for you guys. I hope that they help you beat hunger while you are trying to lose fat, if you are trying to lose fat. If you have any other tips, please do share them down in the comments below so that everyone can benefit from your wisdom. In the meantime, if you liked this video, please do give it a big thumbs up because it really does support me and my channel and I really genuinely appreciate it. Please share this video with your friends and your family and your neighbors. If you want to see more fat loss related content from me, you can check that out over here. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see future videos from me, and make sure you turn on the notifications if you want to be notified about future videos from me, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye.